this is good to be with you all. This is Jay Smith, Dr. Jay Smith, and I have two friends with me. I have Murad, who is from the Middle East, who has he is a native Arab speaker, and we've asked him to come on board, especially to look at the Qur'an. We have the Qur'an here, and in the Qur'an, there are references to Muhammad. So I've asked Murad to come and unpack those references, and I've also asked my good friend, Mel, who is from Sneakers Corner. You probably know him well. I've had him here before. We worked together, and we're going to continue to work together. And one of the things we're doing is looking at who Muhammad is, whether he existed, and also is it the Muhammad we see in the traditions? Is that the real Muhammad, or is it the Muhammad we see in the 7th century? Which Muhammad are we talking about? One of the comebacks has been that Muhammad can be found in the Quran. And there are 4 verses that refer to him by name. So we thought, so we think, and that's what most people would assume. Murad, who is an expert in this area, a native speaker, understands Arabic, has translated the Quran from Arabic into English, would like to dispute that. And so I've asked him to come on board. He's going to go ahead and take it from here, and he has his own PowerPoint. So I'll ask Murad. He cannot show his face for security reasons. And so he will show the PowerPoint and explain how the 4 references in chapter 3, verse 144, in chapter 33, verse 40, in chapter 47, verse 2, and in chapter 48, verse 29, how that these 4 references are not indeed the Muhammad of history, nor the Muhammad, the prophet that Muslims would like us to believe, but someone else. And who exactly that person is, well, I'm going to let Murad tell you. Now, we're not going to necessarily take it in that sequence. Murad wants to take it in a different sequence because you'll see as he unpacks it. So, Murad, in the Middle East, God bless you. It's over to you.
Well, first of all, Dr. J. Smith, thank you very much for having me. And I want to say on a record that I'm a big fan of you, and I'm a big fan of Robert Spencer. Robert Spencer is the one who got me into this, especially with his book, Did Muhammad Exist? So when I read Did Muhammad Exist, he made a great case for asking about his historicity, but he didn't go very deep into the Quran, especially the 4 references to Muhammad. So now I will share the screen and we will look at Muhammad in the Quran.
While you're sharing screen, I asked Robert Spencer about this very thing, why he's not really taking on the Quran. And he made very clear that that is not his area of expertise. But this is your area of expertise, Murad. So thank God that you've come on board and are able to do something that people like Robert Spencer or myself cannot do. So over to you. Go ahead and let's unpack these 4 references.
Back in 2012, Robert Spencer and David Wood debated Anjem Chowdhury and Omar Bakri on ABN Set. The title of the debate was, Did Muhammad Exist? The only argument presented from the Muslim side was Muhammad definitely existed because the Quran says so. This is a circular argument, but this is not the problem. The idea is, did the Quran say so? In this presentation, we will take a deeper look at the only 4 mentions of Muhammad in the Quran. And who do they really refer to? And I must say that Ahmad is not the same as Muhammad. If I went into a room and said Ahmad, the Muhammads will not look at me because they know that they're not the same.
Let me ask and jump in here real quickly, Murad. Isn't Ahmed a diminutive of Muhammad? Aren't they? It's not that it's the same word, but isn't it a diminutive like Joe is diminutive of Joseph?
They say it's from the same root, which is Hamad, and I have no problem. But you see, the word Ahmad, we do not see it in the history. It has no historicity. Muhammad was never referred to as Ahmad, either in the tradition or in other outside literature. So this is problematic.
In the Quran, in chapter 7, verse 157, and chapter 61, verse 6, you have the reference to Ahmad. That is not Muhammad there, even in the Quran then.
Yes, exactly.
But so
this
is both in the Quran in that case, which is not one of the 4 we're looking at today. That also is not Muhammad.
Yes, so I'm not including here what Ahmad means because this is a separate study. Here only the 4 references to the word Muhammad. This is in the presentation.
Okay.
Now, Christoph Luxemburg, he is the famous German who did the study about the Syrio-Aramaic roots of the Quran. He and others hypothesized that Muhammad on the inscriptions of the Dome of the Rock was a reference to Jesus, not the Arabian prophet. In this presentation, I will be using my own literal translation of the Quran. I didn't translate the whole of the Quran, just some crucial verses. I take it word for word. So now I will see how strong is Luxemburg's hypothesis. Who are the Muhammads in the Quran? So before I go on, I will ask you if you want to comment before I start with the 4 references.
No, this sounds good. This is
Go
what
ahead.
we're waiting for. We've known about these 4 references. It's fascinating that there are only 4. You would think there'd be, if he is so important, he would be right through the Quran in the Arabic text. We know that there are multiple, almost around 90, 93 references to Isa. Why is Muhammad so few? And you're saying it's even fewer than that. In fact, what you're going to let us know is there's 0 references to him. I assume by the time we finish this recording.
Okay, so here we have the 4 Quranic references, and I will look at each one of them and examine them. Do they match Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, 100% or not? The first reference is in Surah 47, verse 2. This is not the traditional sequence. I'm just taking it from another sequence. It says, and those who believed and did righteous deeds and believed in what is sent down Muhammad, and is the truth from their Lord, removed from them their sins and amended their condition. This is what it says. Okay, so when we look at this surah, the name of the surah is Muhammad. This is one of the main points that the Muslims argue. How can we have a whole surah called Muhammad and this guy doesn't exist? Well, this surah is named Muhammad, but that doesn't matter because it is not 100% sure, since the Islamic sources mention that it used to be called Surah of Fighting, which is Surah al-Qital. These are other traditions. This is believable since other surahs also underwent a name change, like Surah 17. Naming the surahs is a later invention, and the evidence for this is that Sana'a manuscript, which is the oldest, never had names for the surahs. The beginning of the surah, this is a mistake. I mean to say the beginning of the surah coheres nicely with the ending of the surah before it. But it seems that it was butchered into a new separate surah without any logical meaning. It has been renamed later to historicize Muhammad, just like Surah 17 has been renamed to Al-Isra, meaning the night journey, to historicize this event. But if you look at Surah 17, if you read it just with a critical eye, you will find that it says his servant in the beginning. It never says Muhammad. So this is a critical point. This was about the name. Now, if you want to comment, Dr. Smith, so that I go to what the verse actually says.
Well, I think this is fascinating. Mel, if you could jump in as well, because here you have this, the only comeback really that this has to be Muhammad is that the entire chapter is named Muhammad. Therefore, how can you have a chapter name without of the man himself without saying that this verse is about him? And you're saying that chapter name is a later inclusion. That is, and that is the case with all of the surahs. All the earliest manuscripts do not have surah names. It makes sense, therefore, that these are added at a later date. And what I think is fascinating, Murad, you're also bringing out that the reason that the later names are even added is because people needed to create a historicize. You're saying that they need to put this in a history. So this Surah 17, you're looking at verse 1, where he is going This used to talk about fighting, but now it talks about him going up to the seven heavens, the Miraj. And so they had to put that in there to talk about that event that's in verse 1. Of course, that's a later addition. In the same case, Muhammad, they had to have the name Muhammad. They had to unpack that must be Muhammad, so they put the name of the surah at a later date. To me, that's a no-brainer. To me, it seems obvious to me. What do you think, Mel?
Yeah, I think the fact that they have changed the title is a way of making sure that the reader interprets the text in a certain way, the way that they want the reader to interpret it. But if you take away the title, the text itself becomes weaker. And we find other examples of interpolations in the text where they put "O Muhammad" in brackets, which doesn't actually exist in the original. So this is another way in which they mislead the reader into thinking that the text is meant to be taken a certain way, when in fact it could have a totally different meaning.
Okay.
Could I just add something?
Yeah.
The Surah Muhammad itself, it used to be called Surah of Fighting. So the name of the Surah Muhammad itself is not on solid ground. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Qatal. You're right. Qatal. So you're talking about the fight. That was the name. And so why did they change it? What was the reasoning? I'm guessing because they needed to have Muhammad there as a historical figure. They realized they only have 4 references to him, so they create a whole surah instead of the fighting Tekazalal and put Muhammad to recompense that and to make it a stronger argument.
If you make it appear to be a whole chapter about Muhammad, that suddenly brings a single verse to become a whole chapter. So that strengthens the case for Muhammad. So that's what they're at.
Exactly. Now, I can look at the verse now. What does it actually say? Now, here the verse says, "And those who believed and did righteous deeds and believed in what has been sent down upon Muhammad, and it is the truth from their Lord, removed from them their sins and amended their condition." Now, the word sins, I translated it as such. You will find in the English translation, it will be bad deeds, it will be something like this. But actually, this is the same words that the Christian use in the Arabic. It's removed their sins. That's what it actually says. And could this be an indication to the sacrifice that Jesus did? And I will ask you, Dr. Smith and Mel, did Muhammad ever remove the sins? Is this part of the Islamic theology?
No.
I would say no. I would say that it tells us that Muhammad was a sinner himself, so he was no better in a position to remove his other sins than his own sins. So not much good there.
Now, this is an interesting argument you're bringing up, Murad, because what you're saying here is the word for sins, though they say bad deeds in a lot of the English translations, you're saying this is the same word that the Christians use in the Arabic Bible for sins. So we really should be consistent. Obviously, if you are consistent, then that has to be remove their sins, which is, as Mel said, this is something Muhammad never did. How could someone in chapter 48, verse 1 and 2, who asked forgiveness for his sins before he was a prophet and has to ask forgiveness for the sins he does even as a prophet, how could someone who even sins as a prophet remove sins from someone else? In chapter 6, verse 164, in chapter 53, verse 38 of the Quran, it's very clear that nobody else can take on the sins of another. That's so clear, and that is attacking the idea that we're taking on the sins of Adam and Eve. But in this case, if that is the situation, just by looking at the verse it's in front of us, how could that be Muhammad? That must be referring to someone else or something else. In this case, it is someone else. And what you're saying, Murad, is this Muhammad, not the person, is actually Jesus Christ. Now, it's going to be fascinating how you get to that, but I'm going to leave it over to you. God bless you. That's a great point.
Yes. As Christoph Luxemburg said, that there was 2 Muhammads. One which was the original, which was Jesus, another way of saying Jesus. And then came the Arabian prophet. This is a later invention. So this was about the first verse. The second verse, we will have to put in some background first. We have to look at the diatessaron. What is the diatessaron? The Diatessaron is the most prominent early gospel harmony ever created by Tatian, an Assyrian early Christian apologist and ascetic. The idea of a gospel harmony is actually to take the four gospels and to put them into one narrative. Tatian sought to combine all the textual material he found in the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, into a single coherent narrative of Jesus' life and death. Tatian's work became the standard text of the four gospels in the Syriac-speaking churches until the 5th century, after which it gave way to the four separate gospels in the Peshitta version. Peshitta is actually a word that it became Arabized, also became Basita, meaning simple. It's the Syriac version of the Bible, of the New Testament. Peshitta.
What word did you say it meant? Because you broke up there.
Peshitta means simple. It's the same as the Arabic Basita.
Okay.
So now when we look at the verse, we want to examine what does it say. It says, Muhammad, messenger of Allah, and those with him are forceful against the disbelievers, merciful among themselves. You see them bowing and prostrating, seeking bounty from Allah and His pleasure. Their mark is on their face from the trace of prostration. That is their description in the Torah. And their description in the Gospel is as a plant which produces its offshoots and strengthens them so they grow firm and stand upon their stalks, delighting the sowers, so that Allah may enrage by them the disbelievers. Allah has promised those who believed and did righteous deeds, among them forgiveness and a great reward. Now, Christoph Luxemburg says that the word Muhammad, it means the one who is blessed. Now, if we try and say, blessed be the messenger of Allah and those who are with him, it will make better sense.
It's interesting to me, Murad, to go back to that if you wouldn't mind one more.
Yeah.
Because that idea of the blessed one, this is the one that Muslims always try to say that Song of Solomon 5:16, the blessed one, Muhammad, which is in the Hebrew there, they would like to change to Ahmad. In some ways, you're doing the very same thing they're doing, but you're saying actually that this makes absolute sense. The blessed one, the messenger of Allah, or blessed be the messenger of Allah, to me it makes a lot more sense in this context than the way that they have said as Muhammad, messenger of Allah, those with him, as the Muslims today would like to put it. And so it's fascinating that we're kind of reversing. We're reversing roles here, aren't we? Because Muslims, I've had to argue that Muhammad is not Ahmed. Hemdan would probably be a much more correct way in Hebrew of rendering the Ahmed in the Old Testament. What you're saying here, the blessed one, which is really what should be the way that this is translated, has been rendered to a person called Muhammad, which doesn't fit really the context.
I also want to jump in and just point out here we see Allah providing forgiveness, and in the earlier verse we saw that it was Muhammad that took away sins, suggesting that Allah and Muhammad are one and the same, which obviously cannot be if we're talking about the Muhammad of history. So that makes more sense then, that Muhammad must be a reference to Jesus, who is God.
Absolutely. So,
yes, I want to say that in the Psalms, when it says Muhammadim, I've heard this from how the Jewish rabbis are reading it, and this is 100% right. It's the Blessed One, and here it's the same thing. And we see the Quran in other occasions borrowing from the Jewish way of saying things, like Qul huwallahu ahad. The word ahad is the same, the Jewish ahad, as one. But if you take it in the literal Arabic, it will be one off. It will be a problem. So yes, this is it. Now, if we look at the word kuffar, this is a misunderstood word. This word actually means the ones who hide the truth. And the same word from Hebrew, it went into English, become cover. cover the sins or cover anything. Actually, in Arabic, when we play football, we say about a ball, we say cover ball because it's covered. So who are the ones who hide the truth? Now this verse, as we saw, it combines between two parts of the Gospel of Mark 4 and the Gospel of Matthew 12. These are the parables of Jesus Christ. This exact combination is found in the Diatis Harun.
Wow.
Now, where did I get this from? I don't recall 100%, but I think this is Father Gallen, which is the French man. He is very informed about this stuff. So the exact same combination is in the Diatis Harun, which is the Syriac gospel. The question is this why the Quran refers to the gospel in the singular? Is it because it always means the Diatis Harun, which is the Syriac gospel? And now back to you.
So as a source criticism, we can see that the Quran is borrowing from that gospel rather than it being a direct revelation from Allah, supposedly. That would be my comment on it.
Okay, which then suggests that, as we have seen with much of the Quran, it does borrow from other sources. This is, again, just another example of that. Nothing too surprising here in that context, since it would be coming from the Diatessaron that you talk about, which was around in the 5th century. We're talking about now 200 to 300 years later. It would make quite sense that they would be just incorporating what they already see in front of them.
Yes, exactly. Now, there is more evidence to this. The Quran itself, it talks about Jesus. Jesus said, "Indeed, I am the servant of Allah. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. He has made me blessed." So here is another word. Muhammad and Hamad, he made me blessed. Wherever I am, and has enjoined upon me prayer and zakah as long as I remain alive.
Can I just check there with you? What is
Yes.
the word for blessed there in that context? Is it Hamad?
No, it's Mubarak. And
Mubarak,
this is the same word. Yes, Mubarak comes from barakah. This is the same word that we use for Arabic. The Christians in Arabic, they say Mubarak ism al-Rabb. So blessed be the name of the Lord.
Am I right in thinking Mubarak has been used by Muslims as another name for Muhammad?
Sometimes as a synonym, sometimes.
Yeah.
Here, if we look at the Psalms 113:2, it says, "Blessed be the name of the Lord from this time forth and forevermore." It is the exact same idea. Jesus is the one who is Mubarak. He is the one who is Muhammad. He is the one who is blessed. And you can see this in the Quran and in the Bible. And Dr. Smith, I have put the Bible here a little bigger than the Quran, just like you like.
Big enough. I want it bigger than that. Thank you. Okay, well, this is exciting.
So you want me to go to the other verse?
Go ahead. So we've done now chapter 47, verse 2. We've done now chapter 48, verse 29. Let's go to the next two.
This is a controversial one. Surah 33, verse 40. Muhammad was not the father of any of your men, but Allah's messenger and the seal of the prophets, and Allah was of everything knowing. The people, of course, and the Islamic tradition relates this to Zayd ibn Thabit, Zayd ibn Haritha, I'm sorry. And they say that Muhammad was his father and he was his adopted son. Although the Quran just says Zayd. Zayd could mean something else in Arabic. But this is not what we are discussing here. We're just looking at this verse. It is important to see that Arabic, it says ما كان Muhammad, means was not is not, as all translations put it. Therefore, it is speaking about something in the past. This is crucial. This is a reference to Jesus, who really was not the father of any of the men. Maybe people back then claimed to be the descendant of the Messiah for some reason. And I was searching and I found traces of something like this. So Jesus really was not the father of any of the men. Jesus would be the seal of the prophets before the Arabian prophet arrives to the scene. These people, they were Christians, especially Muawiyah. And I forgot to say about the verse before that blessed be, or the servant of Allah. This is a Christian name in Arabic. The word Abdullah is Christian in Arabic. So when we look at the Muawiyah inscription, it says Abdullah Muawiyah. It means the servant of the Lord Muawiyah. He was a Christian. But back to the point, Jesus was the seal of the prophets before Muhammad arrived to the scene. What do you think?
Well, I mean, just looking at the sequence and time sequence that you're putting out here, it would make sense. Since if this was referring to Muhammad at the point of the fact that where Muhammad would be living at the time that this is revealed, this would make no sense. How could this even be a reference that Muhammad would be a father of any of those who are reading this? So this would have to refer to something that happened in the past. He has to have lived or died before this would make any sense. The only one who was living, who had lived or died, that this would make any sense for, and as being a seal of all prophets, would be Jesus Christ. So you would say the blessed one was not the father. Is that how you would then translate this?
Yes. But in the end of the presentation, I will also show you another surprise.
Okay.
But till now, it's better to think that's the blessed one.
So people are aware of what we're doing. So in every case, in chapter 47, verse 2, in chapter 48, verse 29, now in chapter 33, verse 40, you would say that we should introduce the blessed one in each one of these cases.
Yes, exactly.
Or blessed be in the case of 48:20.
Yes, the blessed one, but it's a reference to Jesus. That's what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
I would say, it just to make one quick point, from the Christian context, Jesus is the seal of the prophets because all public revelation ends with him. So this would fit in nicely with what the text is saying.
Yes, because if we look at the idea that Islam maybe was an apocalyptic movement, then you will have Jesus as the final prophet. They wanted the Messiah to come back. They calculated it. They were waiting for him, but he never came back. So then they became angry. They say, well, he is one of the prophets, and he's just a normal prophet. This might have been what happened.
All right.
The last verse that we have in the Quran, which mentions the word Muhammad, is in Surah 3, verse 114, which is on the left. Now let's read this. It says, Muhammad is not but a messenger. Others messengers have passed before him. The one on the right, which is in Surah 5, verse 75, says, the Messiah, son of Mary, is not but a messenger. Others messengers have passed on before him. Now, we do not need to be Arabic speakers. Just listen to this in the Arabic. ما المسيح ابن مريم إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل. The other one, ما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل. The exact same word. It seems that the Quran has this repetition always with different ways of naming people, and this is just one of them. What do you think?
Okay, well, I can see where you're going with this, Murad. So what you're saying in both of these cases, two different verses in two different parts of the Quran. One is in chapter 3, one is in chapter 5. When you look at them, they're saying exactly the same thing. The only thing that they're changing is who this is referring to. On the case of Surah 5 on the right in the yellow, it is the Messiah, son of Mary. In the case of the blue on the left, in chapter 3, verse 144, it is Muhammad. But as we have said in the previous three examples, if you take Muhammad as the blessed one, it would then become the blessed one is not but a messenger. Who is this blessed one? Well, just look on the right. This is the Messiah, son of Mary. And that would make sense then that this is a repetition of already what has gone on before. And it also then fits with chapter 47, verse 2, chapter 48, verse 29, chapter 33, verse 40.
Yes, this is the internal evidence. This qualifies as internal evidence. The Quran interprets itself just by looking at its different verses.
Okay. What do you think, Mel?
I would say if you were to get rid of the first couple of words, like took away Muhammad, took away the Messiah, just left it blank, and you ask yourself, is it referring to the same person? You would have to conclude it is talking about the same person, simply because what it says afterwards is exactly the same. So it makes more sense to say that whoever this person is that's been referred to as Muhammad must be the same person who's being referred to as Messiah, son of Mary. It makes logical sense.
I want to add just one layer to this, and this has to do with the Muslims trying to deceive the West. The Sahih International, it puts it as was not. So this verse about the Messiah, son of Mary, was not, but this is not. Why is that? It's very clear here in the Arabic that it's the exact same word, exact same tense.
So just to be clear, what you're saying is the Sahih International has Surah 575 in the past tense, whereas in the other one, it has it as present tense, but in the Arabic, it has it in the same tense. Have I understood you correctly?
Exactly, yes.
So why would they change the tense between the two? Knowing the answer, asking it, but
This is something that they will have to answer, but this is a part of the deception. If you have dignity, you have to just literally translate every word. Now there is further evidence for this theory. This is the word Yasua in Syriac. We know that the name of Jesus in Arabic is Yasua. It has never been Isa. And you can see here how it's drawn. Now this is the word Muhammad in Arabic. You can see here how similar they are. The Arabic Muhammad is an Arabization of the Syriac Jesus. This is very clear when you look at it. What do you think?
Oh, I see. I see why you're putting this in as a surprise. Uh, Fascinating. So, Murad, what you're claiming is mention all of the material that we have on Jesus, and just for backup for people who don't know where you're coming from. The material about Jesus in the Quran, all the references to him as a baby in chapter 3, verse 46, speaking from the cradle, in chapter 3, verse 49, making birds out of clay, in chapter 19, where he has the trees bend down to feed he and his mother. All these stories are not in our Bible. They are all from sectarian sources. They're all from Syriac sources. And the Syriac sources are what the writers of the Quran had to borrow from in order to find out about these stories of Jesus. And the name for Jesus, as you see written there, that's the first time I've seen the name for Jesus written. When you look at the Arabic name for Muhammad, it's almost identical. And when you look at it first glance, it looks very much the same. So you're making a claim here that possibly this is why they got the confusion. They got it mixed up.
Yes, and this is maybe why the name Isa pops up in the Quran. The Christians in Arabic, they never call him Isa. Isa is close to Isu, which was the bad son, and then they changed it to rhyme with Musa. So Isu became Isa, so that the Quran is always focusing on the rhymes. So Musa and Isa. Why did the name Isa just come into existence? It has always been Yeshua. So it suggests that something went on here. I don't know much. It's just new, but something has to do with the name Muhammad and the name Yeshua in Syriac and the name Isa.
That's fascinating. Mel, I don't know if you want to say anything, because I'd like to say one more thing about this Yeshua.
I think this idea of Isa being used is because they're using it from different traditions which are non-Christian. And that's why there's a different word for Jesus in the Quran rather than, I don't think it is just a simple mistake, or I don't think it's simply for rhyming, but there are rock inscriptions in Northern Arabia that precedes Islam, which would be evidence for it being the basis for why they picked Isa rather than Yeshua.
Just to back up what Murad is saying about the fact that they've got another name for Jesus than what we have in Arabic, the Christian Arabs always referred to Jesus as Yeshua. We know this from the Sinaiticus Codex 151, which is just in St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai Peninsula. And when you look at the date on that manuscript, it is dated to 868. That's the late 9th century. Yeah, that's just 2 years before the death of al-Bukhari. So the late 9th century, you have the earliest translation in Arabic of the New Testament. And in that Arabic translation, the name is always Yeshua. Late 9th century, we're long after the Quran has been written. We're long after Isa has been introduced in the Quran, suggesting that the Christians have always seen Jesus as Yeshua. And as to where the Muslims got the word Isa, I'm going to let Mel and Murad battle that out between them. I'm going to be agnostic at this point. We do know, however, that this could be one of the reasons why they've got the Ahmed or the Muhammad mixed up. If this is the first time I've seen this original Syriac for Jesus, the Syriac name for Jesus, I would surmise, and this is just a surmise on my part, that if you're going to borrow the story from the Syriac traditions, you take the name that goes with it. You bring the name in with you. You bring the story and the name with you, suggesting that may be another reason why Isa is found in the Arabic Quran and not Yeshua.
Yeah, the other thing to bear in mind as well, in that area of Arabia, a lot of Arabs were at least bilingual, and some of them were trilingual. So they would have had Syriac, Arabic, and some of them would have had Greek as well. So they wouldn't have seen Syriac as a foreign language. It was just part of the collective language that people used. So I could easily see them writing this down as a Syriac word, pretty much as is, in the midst of an Arabic text, and then for it to be later corrected maybe by a later scribe, and then it becomes Arabized, as Murad has said.
But Murad, you are saying here that one of the confusions and one of the reasons why Muhammad or Muhammad is in these verses could be because they confused the Syriac rendering. When they saw the Syriac, they then thought in Arabic, this is Muhammad.
Yes, this is a possibility, but what I'm saying that in the large scheme of things, it is a mistake to ignore the word Yeshua in Syriac. This is very crucial. Now, did this get dependent on this? Muhammad, was it an Arabization of the Syriac Jesus or not? This is another question, but this is something which is highly crucial. It seems that the name Muhammad is just a different way of writing Yeshua in Syriac.
And also the fact that it still works in Arabic. Let's presume they made a mistake and it became Muhammad as we see written. The fact that it means something in Arabic, the blessed one, would allow for that mistake to still work and no one to pick up on it. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, exactly.
Murad, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. We've gone through chapter 47, verse 2. We've gone to chapter 48, verse 29, that it looks like it would be coming from the Diatessaron. Let's go ahead and have your conclusion.
Yes. The four Quranic references to the word Muhammad does not fit the Arabian prophet. This is clear from the Quranic internal evidence and from philological evidence if we compare the Syriac way of writing Jesus and the Arabized Muhammad. Calling Muhammad by name contradicts the notion that the Quran is always telling Muhammad, say. So say, say, say. Why will he be calling Muhammad and speaking about him as if he was part of history? This contradicts how the whole conversation was going. Saying that Ahmad is another name for Muhammad in the Quran is problematic and it has no historicity. And Ahmad actually is a figure that Ahmadiyya group, it's kind of messianic. The Ahmadiyya group, they think that this was the Ahmad. So they don't think that Muhammad was the Ahmad. This is crucial. The cumulative evidence seems to suggest that the Quran's authors refer to Jesus as Isa, Messiah, son of Mary, and as Muhammad. And when they refer to him, of course, as son of Mary, so that you don't say son of God. It's just a way to divert you from saying this. Therefore, the Quran is referencing to Jesus, and using the Quran for establishing Muhammad's historicity is highly problematic. The Muslim sides, when they were against Robert Spencer and David Wood, they were just using the Quran. This is wrong. That's all I have to say on this.
Murad, this has been excellent. Thank you so much. This is, of course, you're putting this out there as like a white paper. We're going to get some responses. I want Muslims and those of you who have listened to this video, I want you to respond in the comment section below. If you have difficulty with what has been said, remember, we've gone now through the only 4 references for Muhammad's name in the Quran. Chapter 47, verse 2. The Blessed One is a way that you could put it that way. In chapter 48, verse 29. It looks like this one has been borrowed from the Diatessaron, the Blessed One again, which is referring to, in this case, Jesus. And also when you look at the context, the fact that he's taking on the sins, this could not be anybody else but Jesus, because Muhammad does not take on our sins. In chapter 33, verse 40, Makan, was not in the past tense. Therefore, if it's in the past tense, it cannot be Muhammad because he's there in the present tense. So it is obviously referring to someone that had already come. The only one that would fit that would be Jesus again. And then in chapter 3, verse 144, when comparing chapter 3, verse 144 with chapter 5, verse 75, I think it is, you can see clearly that you have the same reference for Jesus as you have in the other. If you put the Blessed One, as we've seen in the previous 3, then it makes sense that the Blessed One would be the one that this is referring to. In chapter 5, verse 75, then it's synonymous with chapter 3, verse 144. So you've done a very good job, Murad. You've made your case. Now it's for the Muslim side to make their case to see if this is incorrect. This is the beginning of the debate. We're not going to say that this is the ending of the debate. Let's go ahead and let's bring it back and forth. Let's see where we go from there. Let's see the other side. Let's see if people can convince us. I think you've done a very convincing job today, Murad. Thank you for your time. Mel, do you want to say anything before we end?
I think, the fact that Muhammad is mentioned so few times in the Quran is suggestive that the focus of the Quran isn't about a person called Muhammad. So this evidence, I think, supports that and leads us to doubt who it really refers to. So thank you, Murad.
Thank you very much for having me.
God bless you. This is Mel, Murad, and Jay. Over and out.